We are days away from the Golden Globes, and we are here with the A-team of prognosticators to tell you who's going to win, so that you don't even have to bother to watch the awards if you don't want to, because we've got the answers from Paul Sheehan, Chris Beachum, Daniel Montgomery, and Paul, we're going to start with you. The Globes are known for their jaw droppers, right and left. What do you think are the races where we could see some big surprises on Sunday?
Well, I think there's a couple. I think there's could be a split between on the best drama and then the director. I think we could see best drama going to Boyhood, but we could see Inarritu winning best director for Birdman. But I think the most fun one, and I think the one that everyone will be, I bet you it'll be towards the end of the night, is going to be best drama actress, because that's the presumptive Oscar frontrunner, Julianne Moore, but she's got to beat Jennifer Aniston. And the Globes, listen, they love Jennifer Aniston so much that they didn't even invite Angelina Jolie to their party this year. You know, the director of Unbroken. They are so desperate to give Jennifer a hug for the Brangelina fiasco of a few years ago. And I could see that Julianne Moore loses drama actress, and her consolation prize could well be that she wins comedy actress for the role that won her Best Actress at Cannes in Maps to the Stars. A really out there comedy about this fading actress desperate to make a comeback.
Yes, all of that is absolutely possible. But remember, Angelina will probably be there on Sunday. Isn't she going to accompany her husband, who is nominated for director?
What? No. I will. My prediction now is we will not see Angelina Jolie at the Golden Globes.
Really? Okay. I predict she will be there to support Brad, who is of course producer of Selma. It's up for best. I mean, how does Brad go without Angelina? Daniel, could you see? Brad's got to be there, right? He's produced this Best Picture called Selma. He won Best Picture last year for 12 Years a Slave. How does he look ungrateful to this group now by not showing up? And if he does show up, doesn't Angelina have to be with him? Daniel, you first.
Well, yeah, I mean, if he shows up, she would kind of, it would be more a headline if she doesn't show up him than if she shows up with him. So I don't think they would risk that sort of controversy, you know, with him going and then her snubbing because of maybe Jennifer Aniston. And I think also George Clooney is getting the Cecil B. DeMille Award, so he might also be there, you know, or for his buddy George. He has a number of reasons to be there, so I wouldn't be surprised to see them both show up.
Chris, where do you come down on all of this?
On whether Angelina's coming or an actual
the whole thing. You know, they love headlines.
You know, they love. I mean, Angelina's still campaigning. She still feels like, I'm sure her studio still feels like she could get in at the DGA. She could get in at, you know, the Oscar. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but they feel that way. I could see her, you know, how they do on the Globes. They have different people come out and present the clip for a Best Picture nominee. She might be the presenter on the Selma clip.
Oh.
It's always somebody tied in with that movie in some way.
Yeah, but they would more likely have, you know, some civil rights leader or somebody significant rather than Angelina Jolie. But I see your point. I get it. Yes. Let's talk about that category, because I think that's one of the most interesting. Whether or not comedy, not that race so much as, let's move over to the possible consolation prize for Julianne Moore if she loses on the other side. Daniel and Paul and I were at this Paramount party right around Christmas time. HFPA members were all around us, and as we were gabbing with them, you could hear when you say, you know, what do you really like this year among the movies? Maps to the Stars and her performance in that came up a lot in conversation, and I've heard a lot about it ever since. I think they may be tempted to give her that Globe over Still Alice, although, of course, we know they like to predict the Oscars, and they've done a very, very good job the last 3 years. And last year they nailed all 4 acting categories, predicting forward to the Oscars. Or no, they didn't they? They went with, I don't think they didn't pick Nyong'o, did they? They went with, what's her name from, help me here.
Jennifer Lawrence?
Jennifer Lawrence.
What?
Jennifer Lawrence.
Jennifer Lawrence, thank you. God, I'm getting old. Okay, but in this race too with Julianne Moore, we have Emily Blunt, of course, who is a breakout star of Into the Woods. She's done a really great job there. She's really winning. And Amy Adams. A lot of us have Amy Adams. Paul, you first here. who wins this?
Well,
Comedy, musical actors.
The Globes love Emily Blunt. I mean, she won on the TV side. They've nominated her for a lot of things. She's never contended at the Oscars, but she's gotten lots of Globe nominations for film work, and she's never won. I think it's hers to lose, and there's a certain delicious irony there because Amy Adams, she plays Into the Woods, and she plays the role of the baker's wife. And Amy Adams did that in a Shakespeare in the Park production a couple of years ago and got just so-so reviews.
Ooh.
So there's something quite nice about that. It's Emily Blunt who's doing it in the movies, her first time singing in film. I mean, Amy Adams has done that on several occasions. I don't know whether she was offered the role first. I would think that the Shakespeare in the Park production was almost like an audition for the film. But I see it just going to Emily Blunt. I mean, don't forget, it's the Hollywood Foreign Press Association. Emily Blunt is this lovely English rose. I think it's sort of...
But Daniel, please straighten Paul out here. This is the Hollywood Foreign Press Association, which loves Amy Adams, right, Daniel?
Well, they love-ish her. They love her more than the Oscars do. She won last year. That was the first time she ever won. This is her sixth nomination, so she's been nominated a bunch of times. I've got Amy Adams. I'm sort of waffling between her and Emily Blunt, and now I'm also thinking Moore is a real competitor because I don't think there's a real chance for the Golden Globes to predict Oscar here. I think Amy Adams still has an outside chance of a nomination, but I don't think she can win anymore. And I don't think Emily Blunt is going to be an Oscar player, and Julianne Moore will be at the Oscars for Still Alice. So the Hollywood Foreign Press Association can sort of go in a weird direction if they feel like it here. And if they feel like giving Julianne Moore her Oscar audition in this category and going somewhere else in the drama race, they can sort of do that. So I'm not entirely sure. I'm giving the slight edge to Amy Adams just because she's got the most dramatic role, and the Golden Globes like drama even in their comedies. I mean, Michelle Williams, even Jennifer Lawrence in Silver Linings Playbook, she had a lot of big tears, and so just I'm going with that one. But Into the Woods has the Best Picture nomination, so.
What can we just take a step back and just talk about numbers, as in how many voters actually are there in the Hollywood Foreign Press? Isn't it? It's under 100, isn't it?
Right. Mm-hmm.
I mean, and so isn't there? Not to hedge my bets, but this is why there can be ties sometimes. There's so few people voting, right? So perhaps we'll see a tie. Wouldn't that be nice?
A three-way tie. They've had three-way ties before. Chris, what do you think about all this race?
I think if Amy Adams had never won before, this was her 7th nomination and she had never won, this would be an easy pick. But just having won last year, not that means she can't win, but I just think it opens the door for Emily Blunt. They like musicals. They've always liked musicals. As Paul mentioned, they got her career started really in terms of awards, in terms of recognition with a TV movie win back a decade ago, a little more than a decade ago. So we know they like her. I think there's several categories I'm wavering on, but this is not one. I think this is an easy win for Emily Blunt, and it's probably the only place to give Into the Woods an award.
Right, and you've pointed that out, Tom, haven't you? That and I think this is a new era at the Golden Globes in that there's newer voters, but there's also, and when you talk about the TV races to come, this idea of spreading the wealth around, that there is this notion of ticking boxes like, okay, well, there's the one for Into the Woods. Let's make sure we get one for Selma. Let's make sure we get 1 or 2 for Birdman. That kind of thinking.
Yes, they definitely do that. And so you have to think that way because
it's in relation to the movie, like you just mentioned, different titles, but also the studios. They would like for all the studios in a perfect world to walk away with an award over the course of the evening.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, let's switch for a second over to director, where I think there's another chance for a big upset here. And let me explain to you why I'm betting on Alfonso Cuarón to win here. I think we all agree that Boyhood will win Best Picture. I think the Globes the evidence I've seen over there is that they liked it a lot. They liked Selma too, but they seem to acknowledge the fact that that's the Oscar frontrunner, so they'll go with it. But they often love to switch their winners between director and picture, unlike the Oscars, of course. So there is a pattern. When you look through the past list of Globe winners for director, one thing jumps out, and that is they go for the prestige name. Look who's won in the last 7 or 8 years. Alfonso Cuarón, Martin Scorsese for Hugo, James Cameron for Avatar, David Fincher for Social Network. 3 of those did not win the Oscar. Now, when you look at the list of of Globe nominees for director this year, not only does Inarritu jump out, but he's holding the Globe IOU. His movie Babel won Best Picture, remember, a few years ago, and The Departed, Scorsese won director. What do you think? I'm convinced this is where we see Inarritu win it.
I think so too, and I was looking, the way things fell this year with several of the directors writing their own work. I don't see Richard Linklater is also the producer on Boyhood. I can't see him winning personally 3 Golden Globes in one night, and I do feel like he'll win screenplay. So that opens the door here, I think, for Birdman to win directing.
Oh, I think you're on to I'm changing my prediction as soon as we finish this thing.
Just because I said that, they'll flip it. They'll give Linklater director, and they'll give Birdman writer.
I don't think Birdman wins screenplay, Chris. No, that's not the outstanding, impressive thing of Birdman. You don't just think, wow, that screenplay is so great. You think of, wow, the direction's really cool, the acting's really cool, the concept, the execution is cool, but the screenplay, that's okay. But
I agree with you, but I'm just saying, the same thing happened to me last year at the Globes on House of Cards. I knew it was going to win something. I just thought it was going to win for Spacey for acting and not Robin Wright. They always flip it on me.
Daniel, what do you think? Who's got this, Linklater or Inarritu?
I've been predicting Linklater, but I'm starting to be convinced otherwise. I agree that this is going to be a split. I think Boyhood and Birdman will win director and screenplay, one or the other, but I don't. Right now I've got Boyhood winning director and Birdman winning screenplay, but it is true that Birdman is much more a director's achievement, and Boyhood is much more a writer's achievement. And if you give Richard Linklater the writing award, you're essentially awarding him for directing anyway. You may as well. It's like 2 for 1. So they might go that way. I might flip those around.
Let's switch over to Best Comedy Musical Picture. Daniel, you just did an article for us, a wonderful piece that went up in the last 24 hours about this crazy thing that happens at the Globes, where they're mad about musicals, as you put it, and it's really true that if a musical is well received and a success, critically by the critics and by the box office, it tends to win. Now, of course, many musicals have been successful and did not win. Mamma Mia, of course, Rent, Phantom of the Opera, but those were critically lambasted, even though they were, in most cases, successful on the box office side. I think that Into the Woods has an outside chance of taking down Birdman. I really wouldn't bet on it. I think Birdman's pretty solid here. But talk about this possibility that that musicals are a wild card at the Globes, and as Chris was mentioning, it plays to the advantage of Emily Blunt.
It does. I'm also predicting Birdman. I do think it's pretty safe, but Into the Woods I have in second place just because, they do it all the time. They did it the last time there was a Sondheim musical with Sweeney Todd. Sweeney Todd won Best Picture at the Globes, and it was up against Little Miss Sunshine to get the Oscar nomination, and they gave the award to Dreamgirls, didn't get an Oscar nomination, so. These films that aren't really as strong in the Oscar race, the musicals, if they're generally well received, they tend to win the Golden Globe. I mean, and Into the Woods is already a box office hit. It has better reviews on Metacritic and Rotten Tomatoes than Les Miserables did when it won 2 years ago. So, it's definitely possible. The only problem I think it has is that it doesn't feel like a serious musical. It's a fairy tale. It's comedy. It doesn't quite have the gravitas of some of these other winners, like Sweeney Todd, of course, and Dreamgirls and Les Mis especially. So it might seem too light for them to give it the win, but especially with Birdman in there.
I think you look at this category, and there's 3 films actually that I think would have won on any other year, and a little bit weaker year in this category. You've talked about 2, but don't forget Grand Budapest Hotel. It's up for directing and writing. One of only, I think, 3 films that have directing and writing nominations this year, with Boyhood and Birdman. I think it would have won on another year. And going back to screenplay for just a second, don't sleep on Wes Anderson here. He could get on a roll like Spike Jonze last year on sort of a quirky comedy. And if he wins this one and maybe Critics' Choice, and I mean, he could get on a roll and actually go to the Oscars and maybe win.
And I would point out that 2 things, that Grand Budapest Hotel,
the Hollywood foreign press, yeah,
and it was a huge hit internationally. That picture. I mean, this is that's a movie that I don't think enough people are talking about, even in terms of the Oscars. I mean, that picture made $175 million worldwide, so it's really to be commended.
And talking about spreading the wealth, that is the category you go to if you want to reward that film somewhere, because it's not going to win. It probably won't win Best Picture. You know, as Chris said, in a weaker year without those other contenders, it might have. And I don't think it's going to win Best Actor or Musical Comedy either, and I don't think it's going to win Best Director. So if they win some award, especially to give Wes Anderson a hug and spread the wealth, that's the place they can do it.
I agree. Let me just throw open the discussion here to anything else you guys want to talk about on film here. You know, we're all saying, of course, J.K. Simmons wins Supporting Actor, Patricia Arquette Supporting Actress, but
well, drama act. The idea that the Globes, I mean, and it's a long way off, until the Oscars, but the idea of seeing, the auditions, the Oscar acceptance speech auditions. So if you were talking to Michael Keaton and to Stephen Redmayne, and let's just assume they win their respective acting categories, Tom, what would you be telling them that they need to do up there when they're getting their Globes?
Yeah, they should leave the laundry list of thank yous back at their table next to the scotch bottle and get up there and give a performance equal to the wow factor that they gave on the silver screen that got them there for a nomination, because it was up there where Jamie Foxx and Hilary Swank and so many other examples of people were so magnificent up there that they were Oscar inevitabilities. Look, Jared Leto and Matthew McConaughey were fantastic last year. That certainly helped them move forward in the Derby, although they were probably inevitable.
Don't you think of somebody like Keaton, though, the bar is higher? Nobody expects Eddie Redmayne to leave them laughing in the aisles. Nobody expects a memorable, speech from him necessarily, because he's a young guy. They don't know him. But Michael Keaton, I think, has to get up there and be funny and charming, or there's just people going to be disappointed.
Let's talk about Michael Keaton. Michael, if you're watching this, I have a little bit of advice for you. And in fact, I pulled the Fox Searchlight people aside the other day at the New York Film Critics event and had a little chat with them too. We know that the backstory of a contender is largely more important than the front story that we see dramatized on film. In other words, in the case of Matthew McConaughey last year, his transformation from surfer dude to serious actor was part of the reason he was embraced, right? I mean, Nicole Kidman largely won her Oscar because what's his name had just dumped her, and they wanted to to give her a hug, etc. So the point I'm trying to make is the backstory of Michael Keaton is very compelling. Of course, it's this man who had distinguished himself in these blockbuster movies, Batman. He disappears, and then all of a sudden he has trouble. He seems apparently to have trouble getting back into movies. And gee, what a coincidence! That happens to be the whole story of Birdman, which now puts him back at the forefront. But every time you see him interviewed, he stubbornly says, "That's not my story. No, that's not my story." Mm-hmm. It's like, quit fighting it, Michael. Just go with it. He said, "No, I left those Batman movies because I wanted to go to Wyoming and raise my kids. I wasn't turning my back on Hollywood." So I mean, he's not embracing the narrative here. So I would say if he wins, and I think he's inevitable to win on Sunday, he should do something that Inarritu keeps saying that this is really my story instead of Keaton's story, because he had written it before Keaton was even invited to do it. Anyway, they need to get their shtick together over there. Don't you guys agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's called Birdman. Come on, the guy played Batman. I mean, it's sort of it's insulting to not acknowledge the parallels, and that sometimes even if Inarritu wrote it without Keaton attached to it, was he subconsciously thinking of Keaton, as he wrote it? It seems that way.
Well, the other thing too is I've been watching, like I saw a round table with several of this year's contenders, and been watching interviews and people on red carpets and so forth. Michael Keaton, among people, especially actors in their 30s and 40s, who might be members of the Academy too, they hold him in high reverence. He was one of the stars of their youth, and one of those. I mean, back especially in the 80s. I mean, he was doing stuff Johnny Depp only wishes he could do, especially with like a Beetlejuice, Mr. Mom, all of that stuff along there in that way.
Yeah, but that's not. No, Daniel. They hold Daniel Day-Lewis in reverence. I'm not sure that they look at Michael Keaton in Beetlejuice and Mr. Mom and Night Shift and think of him. He's never been nominated for an Oscar.
I'm talking about reverence in terms of he's one of their acting heroes from their youth.
Well, okay, I'd say movie star heroes as opposed to
I'm saying all that to say, if he lays out the groundwork here, he wins at Globes, we know he's going to win there. Let's say he wins at SAG, he is playing an actor after all. Let's say he gets to be on stage 2 or 3 times here over the course of the next few weeks. That is going to help him maybe win an Oscar. If he gets up there and stumbles around and makes boring speeches, it's probably going to go to Eddie Redmayne.
Yes, and that's what we have to watch out for. Keaton has a high probability of screwing it up because he's just contrary all the time. He's looking for a fight in the scenes. So if he pulls that stuff at the podium, Eddie's going to charm the hell out of everyone and stroll off with the Globe to SAG and Oscar next.
Because they want you to want it, and that's sorry, Chris, I didn't mean to be that abrupt with you about the reverence, but it's like Sean Penn can be a jerk because they do revere him as an actor. And then in the case of Daniel Day-Lewis, he was very charming, especially with all those awards he was winning for Lincoln. He was surprisingly charming. They didn't expect him to be funny, and then that he was. I think what we were saying about Michael Keaton is, given his persona as being a funny man, if he doesn't make them laugh, if he isn't amusing, then I think he risks being seen as a grumpy old man. And like Tom said, Eddie Redmayne comes in and he woos these Oscar voters. If he takes himself up to the motion picture retirement home and courts all those little old ladies who are, Anne Blythe and people like that are still voters. That's right. You and me, Tom, we're the only ones who know who Anne Blythe is.
I know, and I'm proud of that fact, Paul, aren't you?
Yeah.
All right, final thoughts, anybody? Daniel, let's come to you. Final thoughts. What do you think?
Well, just thinking about Eddie Redmayne, assuming he wins, I mean, he seems like a likely choice for drama actor, but we haven't actually seen him up against this competition in terms of who wins. David Oyelowo, Benedict Cumberbatch, we haven't seen this sort of happen with a result. But he's got that British factor, and not because they like British actors, but in terms of giving his acceptance speech, we've seen like British actors come up and they just have that natural suave charm to them and eloquence when they accept awards sometimes. And he's a Tony-winning actor. He has stage experience. He knows how to turn it on stage. So he could be a surprise in terms of if the expectations are low for him and he's a charming winner, that could be a big help.
Chris?
One category we talked about it before we started, but we never got to it on the live, that's drama actress. We talked about Julianne Moore. Maybe do they give her the comedy instead of the drama? I just don't see that. I think over the course of the years, especially at Globes, if there's an overwhelming front runner, not like a 2-person race, let's say like Meryl Streep, Viola Davis, but like a really overwhelming front runner, the Globe voters always go with that person. They're going to pick Julianne Moore for drama actress. I know you all think maybe Jennifer Aniston could sneak in here as kind of a comeback, but I was just looking her up as we were talking. She's not the Globe favorite you think she is. Even for Friends, and out of 10 years of that being on the air, she was only nominated twice and won once. So it's not like they have it's not like, you know, she's some of these that they just can't help but falling all over. So anyway, I think Julianne Moore wins drama actress pretty easily.
Mr. Sheehan?
Oh, it's just one of those fun things to watch. I think that I was saying this to Daniel the other day. I'm fascinated by the calendar in that, you know, the Oscar nomination voting closes on Thursday, so it's 3 days before the Golden Globes, and then Oscar voting doesn't happen for weeks to come. And it seems like it's a great show and it's a lot of fun, but in a way they've marginalized themselves by removing them. They're not in the thick of the Oscars. They're not. I don't see them particularly influencing either the nominations or the winners in many ways. But it's a fun show. It's you know, it'll be Tina and Amy for the third year, and that'll be lots of fun. And Ricky Gervais will be in the audience, and yeah, I just think it's a lot of fun to watch. And I'm not quite sure how much it resonates beyond next week, and certainly not next year, as we had trouble remembering who won last year.
I know, that's but I disagree, Paul. I think by them moving up or on the calendar, I think they have more influence than ever. Yes, it doesn't line up. You know, nominations. It doesn't line up as it used to. You know, their nominations affect the Oscar nominations. Their wins affect the Oscar wins. But I think that they established the race so squarely and firmly up front that, in fact, they have more influence than ever. And if you look at the past 3 years, I believe, at the Oscars, they pretty much nailed every top race. Now, previous to that, there was about a 5 or 7 year period there where they kind of almost they got a lot of stuff wrong. But lately, when these Globes have moved back, as they have these last few years, that's where they seem to have really predicted the Oscars, and in a large way, maybe have influenced it more strongly. On a final note, since we love the Globes so much as a party, as you say, Paul, and as a hotbed for upsets, here's the upset I would love to see happen. And I know that it's probably not, but I know that it actually might. And I want to see Meryl Streep win supporting actress for Into the Woods. I mean, they love her. We all love her, of course. She steals that movie. They love musicals. And Patricia Arquette is so good in Boyhood, and of course it's a lead performance. Hiding out in supporting, that always gives it extra heft, extra ammunition to win that supporting race. But I think that there is a long shot possibility for Meryl to win here, and I kind of hope it happens. On that note, thank you all. We will join us on Globes Day. We will be doing this all day long. Now that the internet is an official second screen experience for your award watching habits, turn your TV on one front and turn Gold Derby on your small screen on the other front. And
but make your predictions before the Globes start.
Yes, because Paul is the one who pulls the lever and cruelly shuts down the prediction center a couple hours before that. So the clock is ticking. Get to Gold Derby and make your predictions.
Collectively, you users do better than us editors and our so-called experts. So we need your predictions to steal the collective wisdom of the
God knows that's true. Adios. Thank you all.